Recently, Kamala Harris made a bold and impactful accusation, calling Donald Trump a fascist and saying he admires dictatorships. This polarized type of rhetoric is nothing new in today's politics, but how much of this attack is actually grounded, and how much is just a tactic to shift focus from internal issues? In this video, we're going to analyze the real intentions behind these words and question whether the left's strategy of labeling conservative opponents as extreme threats helps or harms the country. Do you think speeches like this add to political debate, or do they simply deepen the divisions we see today? Let's explore this controversy and what's truly at stake. These comments came at a strategic time during a speech aimed at younger, progressive voters. In today's highly charged political climate, these declarations sparked strong reactions, and it's no coincidence. Harris seems to be betting on a rhetoric that demonizes the former president to solidify her own base and capitalize on the discontent some voters feel toward the country's current direction. But what exactly does she mean by fascist? The word, with its enormous historical weight, is typically used to describe totalitarian regimes that crush civil liberties and silence opposition. By using this term, Harris is not only taking an aggressive stance but also trying to intensify the fear that much of the progressive base already feels toward Trump. However, is there really a solid basis for such a serious accusation, or are we witnessing an exaggerated, perhaps even irresponsible, use of historical terms? This type of accusation raises another question. To what extent is the left, by repeatedly branding conservative leaders with terms like fascist or authoritarian, promoting a healthy political debate? When a high-ranking figure like the Vice President of the United States resorts to this kind of speech, it risks transforming a political debate into a personal, unfounded conflict, alienating those who seek a more balanced and thoughtful discussion. While there are deep ideological differences between Trump and the left led by Harris and Biden, calling the former president an extremist invites doubt about the actual purpose behind these words. Is Harris truly defending democracy, or is she merely looking to bolster her own support by relying on fear and shock value? A critical view suggests that this strategy may serve as a distraction from internal challenges and the struggles of the current administration. Ultimately, this kind of rhetoric could backfire. By accusing Trump of admiring dictatorships, Harris reinforces the perception that the progressive side, led by the current administration, is more interested in labeling opponents than in proposing policies and effective solutions to the country's challenges. Does this fear-driven tactic truly contribute to strengthening democracy, or does it just deepen the division that dominates America's political landscape? Kamala Harris's choice of words, fascism and dictatorships, was far from accidental. These terms provoke, carrying a historic weight that directly impacts the audience. When Harris uses these expressions, she bets on the power of words to evoke fear and urgency, especially among voters who already have a negative view of Trump. But the central question remains: is there a real basis for this type of accusation, or are we seeing alarmism used as a tactic to discredit a political rival? Historically, fascism is marked by an extreme concentration of power, total censorship, repression of opponents, and the absence of civil liberties. Comparing Trump's actions, conducted within the constitutional rules of the United States, with a totalitarian regime raises serious doubts about the consistency of this discourse. After all, the United States operates under a democracy, with checks and balances that prevent any leader from exceeding certain limits, regardless of who holds power. Moreover, it's crucial to consider the impact of this rhetoric on the quality of public discourse. By defining political opponents as fascists, the left not only turns the debate into a personal and emotional struggle but also reduces the public's ability to distinguish between legitimate criticism and simple rhetorical attacks. This type of language creates a smokescreen, making it harder to see the real differences between the ideological stances of Trump and Harris. Another key point is that, by making these statements, Harris seems to underestimate the intelligence of voters. Fear-driven politics is a powerful tool, but it can also alienate those who prefer a more rational and grounded conversation. Does the use of such extreme language truly have the effect that Harris and other left-leaning leaders expect, or does it end up alienating voters who are seeking leadership focused on real-world solutions? In the end, by accusing her main political opponent of admiring dictatorships and flirting with fascism, Harris risks undermining her own critique. After all, if everyone opposing the left is branded as fascist or authoritarian, voters may start to lose a sense of what these terms genuinely mean. Rather than promoting democracy, this approach may actually foster misinformation and public mistrust in the political arena. Looking at today's landscape, it's evident that the left, including Kamala Harris, uses a strategy that goes beyond political disagreements and into framing conservatism as a dangerous threat to society. Instead of debating specific policies, the focus on terms like fascism and dictatorship seems intended to demonize an entire set of conservative values and ideals. But how much does this approach really add to the debate? Instead of creating space for dialogue and reflection, Harris and other left-leaning leaders seem to prefer polarization and confrontation. This kind of rhetoric aims to create an image of conservatism as an existential threat to the country, making it seem urgent to combat. However, many voters see that this generalized attack completely ignores the nuances of the issues. By treating the entire conservative spectrum as harmful, the left overlooks the fact that part of the population genuinely values principles like individual freedom, limited government, and traditional values. This oversimplification is not only dangerous, but also disrespects a significant portion of voters. Moreover, by focusing on demonizing figures like Trump, the left creates a narrative that it is the only legitimate defender of democracy and American values. But is this stance really constructive? Many critical observers suggest this may sound more like a way to deflect attention from internal issues that the left itself faces. Social, economic problems, and even contradictions in progressive discourse end up taking a backseat, as the entire focus shifts toward an enemy that, according to Harris, represents a major risk. Another critical aspect is that this strategy, in a way, discourages attempts at understanding between different ideological spectrums. By treating all opposition as a threat or enemy, the current government risks alienating even conservatives and moderates who don't agree with such extreme rhetoric. Instead of promoting bridges, Harris and other leaders seem to be reinforcing walls, perpetuating a division that benefits no one in the long run. In the end, this fear of conservatism and the view of the left as the sole guardian of democracy feed into polarization and distrust. The strategy may yield results in the short term, but can a politically divided country truly move forward? Constantly demonizing Trump and conservatism risks undermining democratic debate and stifling any attempt to build a more united and balanced society. The polarizing rhetoric Kamala Harris and other left-wing leaders use has consequences far beyond the election cycle. In a country already facing deep political and social divides, the choice to adopt such aggressive rhetoric that turns opponents into enemies may, in reality, make any attempt at reconciliation even harder. Is the left truly aware of the long-term impact of this approach? Instead of strengthening democracy, this stance may be creating even more distrust and resentment between citizens of different political positions. Furthermore, this strategy may harm not only the right's image, but also that of the left. Frequent and extreme accusations create a sense of mistrust in the very narrative they're presenting. When everything is labeled as a threat to democracy, the public may start seeing the criticisms as political alarmism, draining the credibility of the debate. Ultimately, this weakens the left itself, as it reduces the weight of its legitimate critiques when there are serious issues to be addressed. It's essential to remember that polarizing rhetoric also affects institutional stability. Accusations of fascism and dictatorship from an authority like the Vice President are more than strong statements. They end up promoting the view that the political system is fragile and always on the verge of collapse. But by constantly putting this pressure on the system itself, Harris and other politicians may ironically weaken the democratic foundations they claim to protect. Another outcome of this situation is the escalation of social tensions. Voters who feel attacked or unfairly labeled tend to respond with even more resistance, feeding a culture of mutual distrust and hatred. Instead of fostering dialogue, polarization leads to ideological echo chambers, where people only consume information that aligns with their beliefs and view the opposite side as a threat to be fought against. In the end, it begs the question, is the cost of this polarized rhetoric truly beneficial for the future of the U.S.? Harris and other left-wing leaders may be underestimating the negative impact of this strategy, which, in seeking to undermine their opponents at any cost, risks the very national unity they claim to value. If the goal is to strengthen democracy, the path must include building bridges, not creating even deeper divisions. If this content gave you a fresh perspective on the topic, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more analysis and discussion like this. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you think about the impact of political polarization. And check out the next video, where we continue to dive into crucial issues affecting the future of the country.
See you next time.